Welcome back, fellow readers. This is Suave, and today we're going to be taking a look at a light novel series known as King of the Labyrinth, Cry of the Minotaur. This is written by Shien BIS and published by Yen. There's a whole lot of action packed in this book, and we're going to talk a whole lot about it. But first, we're going to take a quick look at what this book looks like. Okay, so here we have our light novel book. So the cover is featuring the Minotaur. We're going to take a quick look at the spine so you can see what this book looks like when you put it on your shelf. We're going to take a look at the back. It's just a simple logo with the Yen information on the bottom. And what's cool about this book is that it is a hardcover, which means we can take this dust jacket right off. And we get this solid red book with a black spine. Nothing too special on the covers. On the inside, we have our cover page, followed by our table of contents. So we can see that there's about 10 chapters. Chapter 10 starting at page 161. This whole book is about 180 pages, so it's not too crazy to read through. If you're a fast reader, you could probably bang this out in like a couple of days. Alright, let's head on back. So what is this story all about? Well, to put it in a nutshell, this story takes place in a fantasy world with RPG elements, and it takes place inside this labyrinth, as you can imagine. This labyrinth has 100 floors, creatures are inside every floor, there's bosses on every floor, and the Minotaur, who is the star of the show, he is the level 10 boss monster. Now, the level 10 out of 100, he's not very strong compared to the other bosses out there. But, he's still very formidable. But what's cool about this story is that this Minotaur finds himself in a situation where he is actually able to leave his boss room. No other boss monsters are able usually to do this. But, he finds a way to do it, and you'll find out in the story how he does it. But he eventually becomes an adventurer himself, and he plays by his own rules. He doesn't follow the same rules as human adventurers do, and he develops over time. He gets stronger, he takes down a lot of human adventurers along his way, and eventually finds himself as the king of the labyrinth, as the title suggests. And that's basically the story in a nutshell. Like I said, it's a very quick read, but it's also a very satisfying read. So let's talk about what makes this book work and maybe what's some of the issues in this book. So the first thing I want to bring up about this book is the illustrations. You probably noticed that I didn't credit any illustrators, and that's because there are no illustrations in this book at all. So it's good or bad, however you take it, it is what it is. Now let's talk about the action in this book, and oh my god, there is a whole lot of action. This Minotaur is ruthless. He will destroy any human that comes in his path and tries to challenge him. You get these descriptions of how he repeatedly bashes their head in, or sometimes he'll maybe rip them in half, and you get all these blood and guts, and they get into so much good detail about it in these battles that personally I'm here for it. So I'm a huge fan of the detail that they go in when it comes to these battles. Now let's talk about the story. The story is very basic. It's not a whole lot of world building going on. And I kind of appreciate that about this book, because it knows that it's not trying to be something that it's not. It knows that it's just here for mindless fun. And the amount of characters that you're following, it's probably, you can count them all on one hand at the very end. And there's probably maybe a little bit some political side, but not a whole lot of details going on that you really need to pay attention to. So because the star of this show is the Minotaur, but you don't follow the Minotaur all the way through. Half of the time it's the human adventurers, and the one human adventurer you're following most of the time is Logan. Logan is the leader of this adventurers guild in this labyrinth, and he is in charge of the adventurers going in and out. And he hears reports about this Minotaur that's somehow gotten out of its boss room, and sometimes maybe it's just rumor, but then the rumor keeps coming back from different adventurers, and then all these odd things start to happen around there, and then maybe someone important dies, and then it brings a little bit of a political game in the back. But this book doesn't try to overload you with too much about what the world is going on around outside this labyrinth. I mean, you do get a little bit of it because something does happen to someone who is very important inside this labyrinth, and it's kind of crazy. But that's sort of a little catalyst as to what triggers things outside of this labyrinth. And so, important people start coming in and out of this labyrinth for that reason. But the very core of this book doesn't lose its way. It's still all about the Minotaur and how he gets stronger, and you just get a whole lot of fun just following this guy through. So I would say that this story is about 90% inside this labyrinth, 10% outside. You get to see what's going on out there a little bit, but the core focus is inside this labyrinth. Now when it comes to the characters in this book, you get to meet all these cool characters. Some of them have really cool skills, but a whole lot of them don't survive near the end. In fact, there's probably only 3 characters that you really care about by the end of this book, and one of them is the Minotaur. So that kind of speaks as to what this book is all about. And there's still a whole lot going on with some of these characters. You get to see how they develop. In some cases, like Logan, he's already a much developed seasoned character, so you get to hear about his background, how he got to this leader position, and how he's trying to make do of this unique situation with the Minotaur. Now, speaking of the characters, when we get introduced to some key people, I thought, okay, this is where the story's gonna go. This is the end game. We're gonna keep going through and see how this Minotaur develops. Maybe we see how Logan develops a little bit, but these are the key players, and this is how the story's gonna expand over time. And I was quickly wrong when I finished this book. The end game actually happens right at the end of this light novel, and it was kind of unexpected. You know, they do a lot of time skips every now and then, but you know what happens at the end is very satisfying. And you know, you think that was what's going to happen anyways, but I thought that was going to happen maybe later down the road, not in this first volume. So it makes me wonder what's going to happen next for volume 2, because I know that there is a volume 2 solicited, and I remember seeing the cover art for it, so I don't want to spoil what happens in this book or who's on that cover art, but you know, it kind of takes you into where the story's going to go next, and I'm kind of interested to see how that story develops, because we don't get a whole lot of what happens outside this labyrinth. And you know, the title of the book is King of the Labyrinth, so I'm wondering if this is going to keep expanding within this labyrinth or maybe other labyrinths within this world. Now, I don't have a whole lot of issues with this book. Like I said in the beginning, this is a sort of dumb fun kind of book where it's one of those where you just want to turn off your brain. You don't want to think too hard. You don't want to elaborate on all these crazy world building. You just want to sit down and have fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the only problem I had with this book was the sort of convenience that the Minotaur had. So, you know, I get it, the Minotaur is this main character. He's not really overpowered, but he builds up to be overpowered. But the book writes him off as sort of narrowly escaping death during most of his encounters. And, you know, I wish they would have wrote it in maybe a little more unique way. But, you know, most of the time when he's going through these floors or there's these time skips, they would say, oh, the Minotaur defeated this boss, narrowly escaping death. he got many bruises, and he learned a lot of things and a lot of experience while fighting this creature. And you know, maybe later down the road, he fought these wave of 8 humans, narrowly escaping death. And so, you know, you get that repeated over and over a little too many times for my taste. So I just wish that maybe the author wrote that a little more uniquely. And that's the basic gist of this book. Like I said, this is a very quick read. Half of this book is about the Minotaur just bashing skulls. The other half of the time, it's the human's perspective on trying to take on the Minotaur, the consequences of taking on the Minotaur, and what's going on inside their heads, how they're going to solve this problem. And maybe you get a little bit of issues that happen outside this labyrinth, but it's not the whole main focus of this story. So yeah, quick read, quick review, which takes us to our final verdict. So my final verdict for this title is that it is a fun read. You know, this book is not trying to pretend something that it's not supposed to be. It is just supposed to be a dumb fun book where you have fun with all the blood, the action, the gore, and you know, you see the Minotaur develop. And I'm actually very curious to see how this book is going to go on to volume 2 and what's going to happen, because the way the book ends, like I said, it's very satisfying. And you know, I thought that was going to be the end game, but that was only the end game for volume 1. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to develop this story, if they're going to go outside this labyrinth or if they're going to keep focusing inside this labyrinth. I mean, obviously this is the title of the book, so just the way it ends, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm just really curious as to how that's going to advance. And while there is that minor issue of plot convenience, it didn't take me out of the story. I thought the pacing was still pretty strong. And you know, I was just having a whole lot of fun reading about heads getting bashed in. So if you're a fan of action and you know, you get all these gory descriptions of death, and you know, you just want to flip the switch off a little bit and just have some dumb fun, then this is the book that you want to pick up. And that is King of the Labyrinth, Cry of the Minotaur. Let me know down in the comment section if you're going to pick this book up, or if you already read it, what you think about this book. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We're going to be doing more light novel reviews in the near future. With that being said, I will see you all next time. Bye everyone.